Good evening, kiddos. So, like it says on the paper here, today we're going to be focusing on feudalism in Western Europe. So to get us started off, we really need to look back at what we were focusing on in class today, which is basically what happens in Western Europe after the Roman Empire collapses. So to get us started with this, I want to show you this image right here. And you guys saw this on the notes, the reading that we were doing today in class. And really, the start of feudalism really has a lot to do with the fall of Rome. It has much to do with the fall of Rome. So as we focused on today in class, when the Roman Empire collapses, it basically leaves a lack of protection. Because the empire isn't able to raise the money that they need to provide the soldiers, Western Europe is basically vulnerable to attack from outside forces. In addition to that, the economy fails. Basically, because the Roman Empire isn't there to construct the roads and everything that they need in order to keep society going, without that funding, the roads break down, and over time, because there aren't good, safe roads to use, people stop using them, and trade decreases. And basically, because of this, because these things are happening, they're vulnerable to attack, the economy fails, trade decreases, both of these things are because Rome can't fund them. Basically, because of these things, people abandon the cities and move to the countryside. And basically, what ends up happening is that because, if you think about it this way, cities are the places where most wealth is stored. So if someone's going to attack you, they're probably going to attack the cities. So that's why they move to the countryside. But because they're doing this, they really have to revert to a more simple, farming-based lifestyle. And they have to revert to this farming lifestyle mainly because of the fact that, the Roman Empire isn't there to provide the services to meet people's needs. So they really have to take a step back and focus on what is absolutely necessary. People need food to survive, and people need safety. So those are the two things that they start worrying about most. And really, this society, this farming-based society that they develop, is really focused around this thing called the manor. And this is a big deal in the feudal system. So, let me show you what I mean by this. This on the right is a picture of the manor. And basically, what this is, the manor is a large plot of land owned by the elite. These nobles, basically. Here is the problem, though. We have all these people moving into the countryside after, the Roman Empire collapses. But there's a couple problems, right? First of all, these elites, these nobles, they can't make any money off of this land if they don't have people to work for them. So that's one problem. The other problem is that the average person, like the random person moving out into the countryside, they can't afford to buy their own land. They don't have the money to do it. So you have the nobles who don't have labor, and then you have people who don't have money for their own land. So I'm actually going to go back up here and process that. All right. So basically, you have people looking for land where they can work on. You have nobles who need labor. And so they developed this thing called the manor system. All right. Here's how it works. How did it work? Here's how it works. Basically, the lords, the guys, well, so these elite nobles, known as the lord. So here's how it works. These lords allow peasants to work on their land. So that's the first thing. Basically, these people come to the Lord and they say, hey, you have all this land, may I work on it, because I need to make a living. But in order to do so, the peasants have to sign an oath that's known as fealty. They have to pledge their fealty. And basically that fealty is an oath of loyalty that they give to the Lord in exchange for the Lord letting them work on their land. So they pledge their loyalty. In addition to that, they have to pay rent and taxes to the Lord. All right, so I pledge my loyalty to you. I also then will pay rent in exchange for me being able to use this land. And in addition to that, in times of war, they had to fight for the Lord in times of war. All right, so there's a lot that the peasant had to do in order to be able to use this land, to meet the needs of their families, to grow food, to basically have an economy. In exchange for this, though, the peasants got things in return. So in exchange for this, they get land to work on. Right? Basically, before this, they didn't have a way to make a living. But because of this system, they can grow their own food. They can sell some of that food to make a little bit of money, exchange it for other goods. So, in a sense, they're able to provide for their families because of this. In addition, the Lord has to provide protection in time of attack. So one of the major ways that this happens, and you can see this on this picture up here, is that the Lord provides a castle, basically builds a castle for the people. And essentially, let me show you a couple more pictures here. I wanted to show you guys this one. That's a freshman year. I think that's a that's junior year. Never mind. That's a 20-year-old Mr. Gillespie there. That's my ex-girlfriend my girlfriend at the time. But this was one of the first castles in Europe that I ever saw. But most castles looked more like this. Basically, these were places that, you know, if an army was invading, all the peasants who were living on the land, you know, everyone would come inside the walls of the castle, and that way they were safe from this attack. And it's not random, like it makes sense that this is surrounded by water, because that water was basically another way of protecting the castle. You know, anyone who's attacking it, to get near it, you had to swim across, and you get bogged down in the mud and stuff. So it's another layer of protection for it. Let me go back to the manor here. All right. So finally, in exchange for this, the Lord has to provide legal protection. Essentially, you know, making sure people don't break laws. And so in the end, what you have is that on the manor, you have the castle, you know, which is the center of, that's where the Lord would live. That's where people would go for protection. You have the church. It doesn't show it on here, but there would be a church in each manor, you know, to meet people's religious needs, to make sure people were being saved. You had the Lord's personal land. So he would own, well, he owns all the land, but he kept part of the land for himself, and basically that's what he would use to grow his own crops and make money off of that. Then you also had land that was basically rented out to the peasants. This was the land that the peasants could use. They would farm their own stuff on it. But again, they had to give some of that stuff that they were producing to the Lord in the form of taxes. Finally, you had the, not finally I should say, but you had the town, and this is where basically you would have craftspeople living. You'd have a miller who would grind grains. You would have a woodworker, a carpenter. You would have a blacksmith. And these people would live in the town, basically providing the other types of goods that the people needed. So, what was life like on the manor? What was life like on the manor? The most defining characteristic of this, by far the most defining characteristic, is that life was very localized. Most people in the, where am I? Is this me? Yeah. Oh, hi. Most people who lived in this feudal system during the Middle Ages, they never traveled more than 50 miles from their house in their entire lifetimes. So if you think about it this way, that would be kind of like the distance from here to Galveston. Basically, that distance, most people in their entire lives never traveled further than that, which is very symbolic of the fact that it is a very localized lifestyle. And really, most of this comes down to the fact that there weren't safe trade routes. There weren't good roads to travel on. So because of that, they had to be self-sufficient. They had to make all the stuff that